Welcome, travelers of time and myth, to Forgotten Scrolls. This is a story for those curious to discover civilizations that mark the world with their wisdom and power, yet sometimes remain hidden behind the clouds of history. Have you ever wondered how a people managed to build an empire in the heights of the Andes, with cities that defy time? Here you will find answers that connect you with that fascinating past. In this journey, we will explore the origins of the Incas. We will learn about their social structure, their spirituality, and the techniques they used to transform their environment. From their first leaders to the arrival of the Spanish, we will explore how this culture created a surprising political and economic system that still influences millions today. This narrative aims to accompany you peacefully so you can relax and immerse yourself in a world of mystery and learning. Throughout the chapters, you will discover the grandeur of their engineering, the depth of their beliefs, and the valor of their warriors, in addition to the clash with a new world that changed their destiny. You will also learn little-told details, curiosities, and how their legacy endures today. This story will help you understand the cultural and historical importance of the Incas and appreciate the power of America's original civilizations. If you enjoy these journeys into the past, I invite you to follow our channel and become a member. Members receive early access to videos and support the creation of quality content that accompanies you on every adventure. Don't miss the opportunity to be part of this community that honors history and culture in a profound and respectful way. Prepare to travel through time and awaken with the knowledge of an ancient empire. Chapter 1. The Origins of the Incas. The history of the Incas begins in the heights of the Andean Plateau, in a time when small nomadic groups sought to settle and form stable communities. According to tradition, the Inca people emerged from a divine lineage, descendants of the god Inti, the sun god, who granted them power and wisdom to govern. These legends were fundamental for Inca identity and to legitimize the power of their rulers. The first Inca settlements were located in the Cusco Valley, a strategic place due to its fertility and geographical location. These early inhabitants dedicated themselves to agriculture and pastoralism, using rudimentary techniques that would later be perfected. Society grew slowly, consolidating around extended families called ailos, who shared land and labor. The initial leaders, known as curacas, governed the villages with authority based on respect and tradition. Among them, Manco Capac stood out, considered the legendary founder of the Inca Empire, who, according to mythology, emerged from Lake Titicaca to guide his people. This account not only united the community, but also reflected the Incas' spiritual connection with nature. Over time, the incipient group began to expand and organize politically, forming a more complex society. The alliance and conquest of neighboring peoples were part of this process, but initially, peaceful coexistence and cultural exchange were predominant. The Incas managed to integrate diverse communities thanks to their social flexibility and respect for local traditions. From the beginning, the relationship with the natural environment was essential for the Incas. They believed that the earth, water, and sun were sacred beings that had to be honored through rituals and offerings. This worldview permeated every aspect of their lives and strengthened the sense of unity and belonging to the empire they were about to build. The first villages were characterized by simple architecture with adobe houses and thatched roofs, adapted to the climatic conditions of the Altiplano. As their knowledge of geography increased, so did their techniques for conserving water and fertilizing soils, which allowed for sustained population growth. The Incas also developed a communication system based on the quipu, a set of ropes and knots that stored numerical and accounting information. This unique method reflects the administrative complexity that was gestating from the first moments and the organizational capacity the empire would have in the future. The initial expansion of the Inca people was marked by the leadership of the first Sapa Incas, who consolidated their authority and extended their dominion to nearby territories. This process was both political and religious, reinforcing the idea of a chosen people to govern under the guidance of the god. The unification of different ethnic groups and communities in the region was a challenge that the Incas overcame through diplomacy, marriage, and the incorporation of local leaders into their power structure. This strategy avoided many conflicts and allowed for the construction of a multicultural society. The legends that tell the origin of the Incas fulfill an important social function. They create a sense of identity and cohesion that endures to this day. These stories were transmitted orally for centuries and are the basis for understanding Andean culture and spirituality. Thus, from humble beginnings in the Altiplano, the Incas laid the foundations of an empire that would grow to dominate vast regions, combining power, spirituality, and wisdom. Their history begins with the profound connection between man, earth, and the cosmos, a legacy that continues to inspire. Chapter 2. The Tahuantinsuyu Empire. The Tahuantinsuyu, meaning the four regions united, was the official name of the vast Inca Empire that dominated a large part of South America. Its expansion began in the 11th century and consolidated in the 15th century under the rule of Emperor Pachacutec. This empire reached territories that today correspond to Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, and Colombia, extending from the mountains to the coast and the jungle. The political and religious center of the empire was Cusco, considered the navel of the world by the Incas. From there, the Sapa Inca exercised absolute power, considered a direct descendant of the god Inti. The empire's administration was organized into 4 suyus or regions, each with governors who reported to the Sapa Inca and ensured territorial and social control. The political structure of the Tahuantinsuyu combined strong centralism with the incorporation of local authorities through a system that respected certain autonomies. This balance allowed for the integration of diverse peoples and cultures within the same imperial framework, maintaining stability through diplomacy and alliance. Communication between regions was facilitated by an extensive network of roads known as the Capac Ñan. This infrastructure allowed not only for the rapid movement of messengers and troops, but also for the exchange of goods and knowledge. These roads were maintained by local communities who fulfilled the system of obligatory labor called mita. The social and economic organization system revolved around the Aelu, a community of families united by blood ties and cooperative work. Each Aelu had assigned lands for cultivation and grazing, and members contributed communal labor to the state and the temple. This structure fostered solidarity and efficient production in a challenging environment. The Tahuantinsuyu Empire also had a tribute system in which populations had to provide resources to the state, but in return received protection and support. This reciprocity strengthened social cohesion and the power of the Sapa Inca, who also oversaw the redistribution of food and goods in times of need. Religion played a central role in legitimizing imperial power. Temples like the Coricancha in Cusco were sacred centers dedicated to the sun god and other Andean deities. Religious ceremonies and festivals were massive events that united the entire empire in a shared devotion and celebration. The empire's economy was not based on money, but on barter and mutual obligation between Aelu members and the state. This planned economy allowed for sustaining a growing population and maintaining large public projects such as roads, agricultural terraces, and irrigation systems. Militarily, the empire used force when necessary to subdue rebellious peoples or expand its domains, but it also preferred peaceful integration. The promise of protection, cultural exchange, and economic benefits convinced many groups to voluntarily join the Tahuantinsuyu. Administrative control was carried out by specialized officials and an efficient bureaucracy that recorded information with the Quipu. This allowed the empire to maintain detailed control over its vast territory, population, and resources, something uncommon for its time and region. The expansion of the Tahuantinsuyu was a dynamic process that combined warfare, diplomacy, and cultural incorporation. The ability to adapt to diverse ecosystems and peoples allowed it to consolidate one of the largest and most complex empires in pre-Columbian America. Finally, the Tahuantinsuyu was not just a territorial domain, but a civilization that developed its own identity based on harmony between humans, nature, and the cosmos, leaving a legacy that still lives on in Andean culture today. Chapter 3. Inca Society, Structure and Roles. Inca society was highly hierarchical and organized, with an order that sought harmony and collective well-being. At the apex was the Sapa Inca, considered a divine being, son of the god Inti, who governed with absolute authority but also with responsibility towards his people. His power extended over the entire Tahuantinsuyu and was respected as a spiritual and political leader. Just below the Sapa Inca was the nobility, composed of the royal family, close relatives, and the curacas, who were local governors. Their task was to administer their respective regions, supervise agricultural production, and maintain order. The nobility enjoyed special privileges, but also had strict duties towards the empire. The priestly class played a fundamental role in Inca society. Priests led religious ceremonies, guarded temples, and maintained the connection between the human and divine worlds. They interpreted signs from nature and the cosmos, influencing important political and social decisions. Artisans and merchants formed another vital group within the social structure. Although they did not hold political power, their work was essential for the economy and culture. They were responsible for producing textiles, ceramics, metal objects, and other goods that symbolized the empire's wealth and prestige. Peasants and common laborers constituted the base of society. They were organized into ailis, communal groups that worked the land collectively. Their labor was the main source of food for the empire, and in return, they received protection, land to cultivate, and participation in community festivities. Women had important and varied roles in Inca society. Many worked in agriculture and textile production, but they could also access religious and administrative functions. The Aklas, or Virgins of the Sun, were women chosen to serve in temples and participate in sacred ceremonies. The obligatory labor system called mita allowed each citizen to contribute a part of their time to the service of the state, whether in public works, agriculture, or the army. This system was fundamental for maintaining the infrastructure and cohesion of the empire, and was based on reciprocity and a sense of community. Inca warriors formed a specialized class trained from a young age for the defense and expansion of the empire. They were valued not only for their physical strength, but also for their discipline and loyalty. War was considered an extension of the divine order, and victory increased the Sapa Inca's prestige. Children received basic education in their communities, learning trades, history, and values. Additionally, children of the nobility were trained in special schools called yachaiwasi, where they studied advanced knowledge about religion, politics, and military strategy. Norms and customs were regulated by a series of oral laws transmitted by the wise and rulers. These rules established rights and obligations for each member of society, promoting respect, justice, and communal work. The Inca social structure fostered cooperation and a sense of belonging, ensuring that each person fulfilled their role for the general well-being. This model allowed the empire to maintain political and social stability, even in vast and diverse territories. Finally, Inca society reflected a balance between power, spirituality, and community, where every role contributed to the grandeur of the Tahuantinsuyu. Its organization was key to sustaining one of the most impressive empires in pre-Columbian history. Chapter 4. Inca Religion and Cosmovision. Inca religion fused spirituality, nature, and government into a single sacred system. For the Incas, the world was inhabited by divine forces that governed the sun, the moon, the mountains, and the rivers, and which directly influenced their destiny and well-being. This sacred cosmovision taught them to respect and live in harmony with Pachamama, Mother Earth. The principal god was Inti, the sun god, considered the divine ancestor of the Sapa Inca and protector of the people. The Incas worshipped Inti through elaborate ceremonies, offerings, and festivals like the Inti Raymi, which celebrated the winter solstice and the renewal of life. This celebration still endures in some modern Andean communities. Besides Inti, there were other important gods, such as Viracocha, creator of the world, and Pachamama, the earth goddess who provided food and sustenance. These gods formed a pantheon that represented the complex relationship between man and the cosmos, marking agricultural, climatic, and social cycles with their influence. Inca priests were intermediaries between the gods and the people, responsible for interpreting divine signs and directing rituals that sought to maintain universal balance. Their knowledge encompassed astronomy, medicine, and symbology, which made them respected and powerful figures within the empire. Temples and ceremonial centers, like the Coricancha in Cusco, were sacred places where sacrifices and prayers were performed. These spaces were decorated with gold and precious stones, reflecting the importance of religion in political and social life. Gold, a symbol of the sun, had a spiritual value beyond the material. The Inca cosmovision also included the belief in dualism and complementarity. Opposing but necessary forces like day and night, masculine and feminine, guided their social and natural organization. This balanced vision was expressed in their art, architecture, and customs. The Incas practiced animal sacrifices and occasionally human sacrifices as offerings to appease the gods or ask for favors. These ceremonies were performed with respect and solemnity, seeking to ensure good harvests, health, and protection against natural disasters. The agricultural and religious calendar was synchronized with astronomical events, demonstrating an advanced understanding of the movement of the sun, moon, and stars. This wisdom allowed them to plan plantings and festivities, ensuring the continuity of life and the Empire's prosperity. Conquered peoples maintained their own beliefs but were integrated into the imperial religious structure, allowing for a syncretism that strengthened unity and respect for cultural differences. Inca religion functioned as a system of social and spiritual control, legitimizing the Sapa Inca's authority as the son of the sun and guarantor of cosmic order. This divine connection reinforced the obedience and loyalty of his subjects. The relationship with nature was sacred. The Apus mountains were considered protectors, and offerings were made to them to ensure their favor. This reverence influenced agriculture, construction, and daily life, promoting a deep respect for the environment. In summary, the religion and cosmovision of the Incas were a complex and vital network that united the divine, human, and natural into a single worldview. This spiritual system was key to sustaining the identity and power of such a vast and diverse empire. Chapter 5. Engineering and Architecture. Inca engineering and architecture are a testament to an advanced civilization that managed to adapt its constructions to the demanding Andean terrain. Amid steep mountains and deep valleys, the Incas designed cities and public works that even today defy the logic and technology of their time. Machu Picchu is the most emblematic example, a stone citadel that integrates the natural and spiritual environment. Inca walls are characterized by their stonework technique, where irregularly shaped stones fit perfectly without the use of mortar. This skill not only granted them remarkable seismic resistance, but also reflects a deep understanding of the nature of materials and terrain. The durability of these structures continues to impress archaeologists and architects. The Inca roads, known as Capac Ñan, were an extensive network that connected the entire empire with more than 40,000 kilometers of routes. These roads crossed mountains, deserts, and jungles, allowing for communication, the transport of goods, and military deployment. They were designed with advanced engineering, featuring suspension bridges and stairways that overcame natural obstacles. The irrigation systems and agricultural terraces represent another example of engineering adapted to the environment. The terraces, known as andines, prevented erosion and increased the cultivable area in mountainous regions. Canals and aqueducts transported water from distant sources, ensuring constant irrigation, vital for food production. Inca urban planning respected the Andean cosmovision, orienting temples and buildings according to cardinal points and astronomical phenomena. Cusco, the capital, was designed like a puma, a sacred animal, integrating functionality and symbolism. This relationship between architecture and spirituality enriched daily experience and the sense of belonging. Public buildings such as palaces, temples, and warehouses had specific functions and were built to last. The kolkhoz, strategic warehouses, allowed for storing food and resources for times of scarcity, demonstrating efficient and foresighted economic planning. These infrastructures supported social well-being and the empire's stability. In hard-to-reach areas, the Incas created suspension bridges made of plant fibers that had to be rebuilt regularly. These structures allowed them to cross mighty and deep rivers, facilitating communication between communities and territorial defense. Community E. Cooperation was essential for their maintenance. Inca builders had a deep respect for nature. Therefore, they adapted their works to integrate them without altering the environment. Sacred rocks and apus, mountains, were preserved, and construction sought to harmonize with the landscape. This environmental philosophy remains a relevant lesson for modern architecture. Collective labor was the basis for carrying out these monumental works. The Mita summoned thousands of temporary workers who provided specialized and general labor. This system allowed even complex projects to be completed in relatively short times, strengthening unity and a sense of community. The Incas also developed advanced techniques for draining water and preventing floods, using drains and underground canals. These solutions showed a detailed understanding of local hydrology and a constant interest in protecting their constructions and crops. Machu Picchu, though the most famous, was not the only prominent architectural center. Other sites like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo feature imposing and strategic structures that blend defensive and ceremonial functions. These complexes show the diversity and sophistication of Inca architecture. In conclusion, Inca engineering and architecture were fundamental pillars for the empire's development, allowing them to live and prosper in a geographically challenging environment. Their legacy endures as a symbol of creativity, resilience, and respect for nature. Chapter 6: Economy and Agriculture. The Inca economy was not based on money, but on a communal and solidarity-based system centered on the Ailu, which was the social and productive base. Each Ailu worked the land together, sharing responsibilities and benefits. This model guaranteed self-sufficiency and the equitable distribution of resources among its members, preventing excessive individual accumulation. Obligatory labor, known as mita, was a fundamental pillar for the economy. Each citizen had to contribute time and effort to collective tasks for the state, such as the construction of roads, agricultural terraces, and public works. In return, they received protection and the right to cultivate their own lands within the Ailu. Agriculture was the heart of the economy, adapted to mountainous conditions through innovative techniques. Terraces or andines allowed cultivation on steep slopes, increasing the usable area and preventing erosion. This practice was essential to feed the growing Inca population. The Incas cultivated a variety of products that included potatoes, corn, quinoa, yucca, and native fruits. Each crop was associated with a specific altitude and climate, demonstrating a deep understanding of Andean microclimates and an efficient optimization of available territory. In addition to agriculture, livestock farming was important, especially with the raising of llamas and alpacas. These animals provided wool for textiles, meat for food, and were used as pack animals for transport on difficult roads. Their economic and cultural role was vital in Andean life. The Inca state organized the production and storage of food in large warehouses called kolkhoz. These warehouses allowed for accumulating surpluses for times of scarcity, ensuring food stability in the face of droughts or poor harvests. The planning and management of these resources were sophisticated and effective. Barter was common among Alisan regions, facilitating the exchange of agricultural products, textiles, and other goods. The extensive Inca road network, Capacñan, allowed these exchanges to take place quickly and safely, strengthening the empire's economic integration. The administration of the economic system was controlled by officials who used the quipu to keep precise records of production, distribution, and labor performed. This unique tool guaranteed organization and transparency, fundamental aspects for economic stability. Reciprocity was a key principle. In the Inca economy, the state offered support to its inhabitants through the distribution of food and assistance in times of difficulty, creating a bond of trust and mutual obligation between rulers and governed. Communities also practiced rituals related to agriculture, asking for the gods' blessing for harvests and showing gratitude for the earth's fertility. These acts reinforced social and spiritual cohesion, vital for economic success. The combination of collective labor, agricultural, technology, and efficient administration allowed the Incas to sustain an empire with millions of inhabitants, guaranteeing food and resources for all. Their economy based on cooperation continues to be an example for understanding alternative production models. In summary, the Inca economy and agriculture reflected a society harmonious with its environment, which prioritized common well-being and sustainability. This economic legacy is one of the factors that explain the enduring cultural influence of the Tahuantinsuyu. Chapter 7. Art and Material Culture. Inca art was a direct expression of their identity and spirituality, reflecting values and worldview in every work. The Incas developed precise techniques in textiles, ceramics, metallurgy, and stone carving that were distinguished by their functionality and beauty. Their art was not only decorative but also symbolic, loaded with cultural and religious meaning. Textiles were considered the most valued artistic manifestation. Inca weavers used alpaca and llama wool to create pieces with geometric designs and natural motifs. Vibrant colors were obtained with natural dyes, and the quality of the weaving was so high that some garments were reserved for nobility or religious rituals. Inca ceramics had both a practical and ceremonial function. Vases, jars, and plates were decorated with symbolic patterns representing elements of the natural world such as animals, plants, and geometric figures. Although their form was simple, the quality of the finish and the variety of styles reflect great technical mastery. Metallurgy was another fundamental pillar of Inca art, excelling in the creation of gold, silver, and copper objects. Gold was considered the blood of the sun and was used in ornaments, jewelry, and ceremonial objects. Artisans created pieces with religious and social motifs, combining beauty and symbolism in their works. Stone sculptures played a fundamental role in architecture and in the representation of deities. Carved figures and reliefs adorned temples and ceremonial centers, depicting sacred animals such as the condor, puma, and serpent, symbolizing the celestial, terrestrial, and underworld, respectively. Quipu's, although not traditional visual art, constitute a unique system of record-keeping and communication made of ropes and knots. Their complexity reveals a high level of intellectual development, serving to account for and transmit information in a coded manner throughout the empire. Artistic techniques were transmitted from generation to generation within the Alis, preserving ancestral styles and knowledge. Artisans enjoyed significant social prestige as their work strengthened cultural identity and the bond with ancestors and gods. Inca art also manifested in the decoration of everyday objects, showing the importance of aesthetics at all levels of society. From household utensils to clothing, beauty was a value that permeated daily life. Symbology was omnipresent and served to educate and recall collective values. The repeated patterns in textiles and ceramics were not random, but representations of myths, natural elements, and concepts of duality, balance, and power. Religious festivals and ceremonies were accompanied by artistic objects that enriched the sensory and spiritual experience. Ornaments, masks, and special garments helped create a sacred atmosphere and conveyed the connection with the divine world. Inca art, due to its combination of technique and symbolism, continues to be studied and admired for its ability to transmit the grandeur of an empire that managed to unite functionality with spiritual beauty. Its legacy endures in current Andean cultures. In short, Inca art and material culture reflected not only their identity, but were living tools that connected people with their environment, history, and beliefs, contributing to cultural cohesion and resilience over time. Chapter 8. The Inca Army and Conquests. The Inca army was a disciplined and organized force that enabled the expansion and maintenance of the Tahuantinsuyu. From an early age, young people were trained in combat techniques and physical endurance, preparing to defend the empire and participate in military campaigns. Military education was linked to the formation of values such as loyalty and sacrifice. The military organization was structured into hierarchical units, with commanders leading groups according to size and mission. These units could mobilize quickly thanks to the extensive network of roads that facilitated logistics and communication between the different regions of the empire. Inca warriors used weapons such as spears, slings, maces, and bolas, in addition to shields made of leather and wood. Although they lacked metal weapons for warfare, their skill, training, and knowledge of the terrain gave them a considerable advantage in combat. Inca conquests were based on a combination of military force and diplomacy. Before war, the option of surrender and peaceful adherence was offered, preserving local customs in exchange for loyalty and tribute. This facilitated the integration of new territories into the empire. When resistance was inevitable, the Incas deployed tactical strategies adapted to the geography, taking advantage of mobility in the mountains and valleys to ambush or surround their enemies. Coordination and communication between troops were key to their success in battle. The FAO, military meta, required each Ailu to provide warriors for the army, reinforcing the idea of community and service to the state. Soldiers were also responsible for protecting roads, ceremonial centers, and settlements, ensuring territorial control and internal security. Training included endurance exercises, weapon handling, and discipline, fostering obedience and physical preparation. Young men were instructed in group tactics and knowledge of the terrain, vital elements for defense and offense. In mountainous areas, the Inca army also employed messengers called chasquis, who ran long distances carrying urgent messages. This rapid communication network increased efficiency in troop mobilization and order delivery, strengthening imperial control. Military campaigns allowed the empire to expand from the altiplano to the coast and jungle, integrating a diversity of peoples and cultures. This expansion was fundamental for consolidating Inca power and securing strategic resources such as fertile lands and minerals. Military presence also played a symbolic role, demonstrating the Sapa Inca's power and deterring rebellions. Soldiers were seen as guardians of order and justice, with a strong sense of sacred mission that motivated them to fight bravely. The Inca army was not just an instrument of war, but also of social cohesion. Through military service, collective identity, discipline, and cooperation were strengthened, values that sustained the empire's functioning. In summary, the Inca army was a formidable and efficient force whose training, organization, and strategies contributed decisively to the construction and maintenance of the Tahuantinsuyu, leaving a legacy of order and discipline that still fascinates. Chapter 9. The Clash with the Spanish. The encounter between the Incas and the Spanish conquistadors was a decisive moment that would mark the end of an ancient empire. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro and a small group of soldiers arrived in the lands of the Tahuantinsuyu, finding a powerful civilization amidst internal conflicts. This cultural and military clash was the beginning of a series of events that would change history forever. The Spanish took advantage of the civil war that pitted brothers Huáscar and Atahualpa against each other for control of the empire. This division weakened the internal cohesion of the Incas, facilitating the Europeans' conquest strategy. Atahualpa, newly victorious, was captured in the city of Cajamarca during an encounter with Pizarro in a surprising and violent action. The capture of the Sapa Inca represented a devastating blow to Inca resistance. The Spanish demanded an enormous ransom in gold and silver, which was delivered, but it did not guarantee Atahualpa's freedom. Finally, the Inca was executed, creating a power vacuum that the conquistadors exploited to impose their dominion. The Spanish had firearms, horses, and metal armor, technologies unknown to the Incas. Although Inca warriors fought bravely and adapted their tactics, these European military advantages proved overwhelming in several subsequent confrontations. The arrival of the Spanish also brought diseases like smallpox, which spread rapidly among the indigenous population, causing massive mortality. This epidemic further weakened the Andean people's capacity for resistance, making the conquest quicker and more definitive. The conquistadors destroyed temples and religious symbols, imposing the Catholic religion and restructuring Inca society under a colonial system. This cultural imposition meant the loss of much of the Incas' spiritual and cultural heritage, although many traditions survived in syncretic forms. Despite Spanish technological and military superiority, there were episodes of prolonged resistance in various regions of the empire. Indigenous leaders organized rebellions and kept ancestral traditions alive, demonstrating their people's resilience and pride in the face of colonization. The alliance with indigenous peoples rival to the Incas was a key Spanish tactic to consolidate their power. Many ethnic groups that had been subjugated or were at odds with the Tahuantinsuyu saw in the Europeans an opportunity to free themselves, actively collaborating in the conquest. The cultural clash was also a process of exchange and adaptation. The Spanish learned local customs and used translators who facilitated colonial control and administration. At the same time, elements of Inca culture endured in language, agriculture, and social practices. The fall of the Tahuantinsuyu was not an instantaneous event, but a complex process that combined violence, diplomacy, and disease. Spanish dominion gradually consolidated over several decades, profoundly transforming the continent's political and social geography. This clash symbolizes one of the most momentous encounters in world history, where two opposing worlds collided and gave rise to a new reality. The history of this confrontation remains fundamental to understanding the identity and memory of Latin America. Ultimately, the clash with the Spanish was a tragic and transformative process that sealed the fate of the Inca Empire, leaving a legacy of resistance, mestizaje, and new cultural forms that still resonate today. Chapter 10. The Fall of the Inca Empire. The fall of the Inca Empire was a complex process involving multiple factors, both internal and external. Although the arrival of the Spanish was decisive, internal disputes and diseases played a fundamental role in the collapse of the Tahuantinsuyu. This chapter explores the causes and consequences of this dramatic outcome. Internally, the empire was weakened by the civil war between Huáscar and Atahualpa. This conflict divided the Inca people and undermined their capacity for resistance against external threats. The rivalry between these brothers left the empire fragmented and vulnerable at the crucial moment of the Spanish arrival. Diseases brought by the Europeans, especially smallpox, caused havoc among the Andean population, who lacked immunity to these viruses. Millions of indigenous people died in successive epidemics, weakening communities and affecting agricultural production and social organization. The capture and execution of Atahualpa was a symbolic and strategic blow for the Spanish. Without a strong central leader, Inca resistance dispersed and lost coordination, which facilitated the imposition of European dominion in different regions of the empire. The Spanish strategy of allying with subjugated peoples or enemies of the Incas accelerated the fall. These groups collaborated with the conquistadors to defeat their oppressors, further fragmenting the territorial and political unity of the Tahuantinsuyu. Furthermore, the technological and military superiority of the Spanish, with firearms, horses, and armor, was decisive in the confrontations. Although the Incas were experts in combat on their terrain, they could not match the material advantages of their invaders. The imposition of the colonial system radically changed the economic and social structure of the ancient empire. Forced labor, new institutions, and evangelization modified the lifestyles of indigenous peoples, imposing an order alien to their culture. Despite the defeat, resistance did not disappear completely. In remote areas like Vilcabamba, the Incas maintained an independent state for several decades, defending their traditions and autonomy against Spanish expansion. The fall of the empire also meant the loss of knowledge, traditions, and forms of government that had allowed the development of one of America's most advanced civilizations. However, many of these elements survived in indigenous communities to this day. The end of the Tahuantinsuyu marked the beginning of a prolonged colonial era, with profound demographic, cultural, and social consequences for the Andean region. The memory of this great civilization remains alive in the traditions and identity of its descendants. The history of the fall of the Inca Empire is a reminder of the complexity of historical processes, where the combination of internal and external factors can radically transform a civilization. Its study invites us to value the legacy and resistance of indigenous peoples. Ultimately, the fall of the Inca Empire was a tragic chapter, but also a starting point for the rich and diverse culture that characterizes Latin America today, leaving a heritage that continues to inspire and move. Chapter 11: Curiosities and Legacy of the Incas. The legacy of the Incas remains present in many aspects of current Andean culture. The Quechua language, for example, is spoken by millions of people in several South American countries and keeps alive the oral tradition of this ancient civilization. It is one of the most important and enduring legacies of the empire. Furthermore, many Inca agricultural practices are still used today. The technique of terraces for cultivating in mountainous areas is an example of advanced agricultural engineering that allowed for utilizing difficult terrain. These techniques continue to help farmers in the region maintain sustainable crops. The Incas also excelled in textile production, creating fabrics with very elaborate colors and designs that had social and religious meanings. Today, these patterns continue to inspire Andean artisans and are a symbol of cultural identity for their descendants. Another curiosity is the construction of roads that united the entire empire. The Chapak Ñan, a network of more than 40,000 kilometers, allowed for efficient communication and administration. This road system was declared a World Cultural Heritage by UNESCO, highlighting its historical importance. The quipus, a system of knots used to record information, constitute another fascinating legacy. Although their complete interpretation remains a mystery, it is known that the Incas used this tool to control the economy, censuses, and even messages. Their sophistication reflects the empire's administrative complexity. Traditional Andean medicine also has roots in Inca knowledge. Medicinal plants, rituals, and ancestral healing practices are still used in indigenous communities, showing the continuity of ancient knowledge that valued the relationship with nature. The religious impact of the Incas also persists in current festivities and rituals. Celebrations like the Inti in honor of the sun god remain a living example of the spiritual and cultural heritage that endures despite colonization and time. Many Andean peoples maintain in their daily traditions the social organization of the Elu, which fosters mutual aid and communal work. This ancestral system remains a pillar for cooperation and social life in rural areas. Inca construction techniques, based on perfectly carved stones without the use of mortar, have resisted earthquakes for centuries. Machu Picchu is the best known example, but many other Inca structures are still standing, demonstrating their architectural excellence. At a symbolic level, the figure of the Sapa Inca remains an emblem of authority and ancestral power for the descendants of indigenous peoples. His history inspires respect and pride for an identity that resisted the passage of time. The Inca cosmovision, which emphasizes harmony with nature and the importance of cycles, still influences current agricultural, environmental, and social practices. This ecological approach is relevant in modern debates about sustainability and conservation. In summary, the legacy of the Incas is a living force that continues to enrich Andean and global culture. Their history, traditions, and knowledge invite us to reflect on the richness of original civilizations and their importance in the contemporary world.